On the IM Drive is SheInspires. SheInspires profiles inspiring women of our times across all sectors of society. Join us as our distinguished guests share their lives with us, their journey behind the scenes, why they do what they do, life's lessons garnered over the years, their faith, family life and work balance, and so much more. Hello and welcome to SheInspires. SheInspires is an initiative by Sunny 88.7 FM to celebrate women across the numerous sectors we have in this country: aviation, the entrepreneurs, those who are in the financial sector, all the sectors you can think of. On SheInspires, you're going to be hearing from a woman in such a sector. My guest for today is the lovely and amazing, beautiful Dzigbordi K. Dosoo. Dzigbordi, it's great to have you join us on SheInspires. Thank you for honoring our invitation. And in this month of May, we are celebrating women like you.
Thank you for having me.
Doing. Our pleasure. So let's start off. What's a day in your life like?
A day in my life?
Yeah.
Work, 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 and more work.
Really?
Yeah.
But how does it start?
Times, I actually start the day meditatively, just like everyone will, but I believe in setting intention. So one of the things I always think about is how I'm going to affect the next person who is with me, around me, or behind me for the day. It's something that I don't take for granted. I've learned over the years that what people think, how people feel, and what you want people to do is very important. So a lot of times somebody will say, okay, maybe I start my day with working out, a prayer, I go with this. I believe that I end my night with setting intention and I start my day with setting intention. So yes, I go through the mode of prayer. Yes, I do my daily exercise if I can. If I don't get it in the morning, I get it sometime during the day. These days I don't get it that much because I'm so busy, but I always try and fit in something to get some steps going. But the most important thing that I believe that has affected my life and the people around me is that I always have an intention for what somebody around me must feel before the end of the day. And it's something that I do not take for granted. I don't think there's any day that I have thought through the day and said, I'm not going to affect someone. So now, intentionally or unintentionally, I find myself doing that.
So you shared a birthday post, and I must say belated birthday.
I'm still celebrating the whole year.
You colored our Facebook page with so many beautiful shots.
Thank you.
You don't look your age. You look so amazing. But your post, you shared about dealing with low self-esteem, lack of self-confidence. I'm looking at the woman you are now. I'm trying really hard to relate
to connect the dots.
Can you take us back to that period of your life?
Definitely. I think as a young woman, and I think I shared and I talked about it a little bit, growing up among boys and trying to always, I think it's just as a young person, young lady, how I grew up always had me struggling to try to fit in, because of course I grew up amongst boys, so it was unintentional, but I also had a lot of young ladies in my life. So I had my cousins, my friends, so it wasn't that I was not among, but there was something about me, I don't know what it was, but I was always restless. I was always feeling like I was out of place. I was always feeling like something was missing. At that time, I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't understand. I always felt like I was left out. And for some funny reason, I always felt like the one who was laughed at. Now, in many ways, you would call me the average. But in everything I did, I excelled. So you would see me excelling in something that I put my mind to, but everybody around me just saw me as the average. So there was nothing distinctive about me. So initially, I used to have my group of cousins that we used to hang out. I mean, today we look back and we laugh at it. I used to be teased a lot.
Okay.
I actually go back and I don't remember what I used to tease about, because I used to be very skinny and I had a little pouch in my stomach. So my tummy was a little bit big. They'll laugh at that. I'll make certain comments, they'll laugh at that.
Was that how you made the comments, or they just?
I'm not really sure. I go back and I remember that maybe I'll ask a question. I think the question was unconventional, so maybe sounds too silly to
Okay.
be true. Today, I see my daughter doing stuff like that, and I actually engage her.
Right.
But at the time, I think people didn't get it. And then I would sometimes wear stuff I was laughed at. So I used to feel like, you know, and when I'm in public, you see me smiling, laughing, but I'm always ready to go back into the hole. I'm always ready to go back to the place where I'm alone, where nobody should laugh at me, and then I found myself 1 minute, you know, very skinny young girl coming from this, and then I started finding comfort food everywhere. So between Form 1 and I think Form 2 of secondary school, if I could remember, I bloated about 4 or 5 sizes. That was the first time I'd experienced weight gain. I never knew what it was, but I think I realized that I had to find things that made me happy. So sweet things, whatever it was, and I didn't get it. But I just felt unaccepted. I felt restless. I felt sad most of the time through my childhood, even though I had people around me. So that concept of not alone but lonely happened to me multiple times in my life.
Did you try to speak to anyone, try to get them to help you understand what you were going through?
You know,
During that
interesting
period.
enough, when you have issues at that young age, people will not even notice sometimes to get it out of you. Today, I realize it. I can always tell when someone is going through something because I recognize it. People always say, how come you are so easy to talk to, better than my mom or better than my dad, or why do you feel like a friend? Or you find young people who would come to me and all of a sudden, you know, I talk to them and they go like very relieved and everything because I was there, and nobody notices that thing about you. I remember there was one time I was talking about feeling rejected, feeling sad, and one of my brothers called me. I think I was talking about it, and he was like, you know, you were the most loved child amongst us
How
all.
did that make you feel?
You know, and I asked him, I said, do you remember this? Do you remember this? He's like, oh, okay. Because he remembers me being like the only girl. So therefore, naturally, I should feel loved. That was what he was thinking. That, you're the only girl. All of us were boys.
Everybody's watching out for you.
The crowd was here. Everybody's always looking out for you. What do you mean? And then I remember when he said it, and I told him, do you remember when I used to do this? When we'll all be there and I'll just walk away. Do you remember when this happened? Do you remember how this affected me? And it's like, oh, I said, those were the times where I felt the lowest. So it is different to look at assumption when you look at a young girl, a young child, a young boy, and you think everything is okay. My biggest fortune through that time was what I did, the outlet I picked to survive that process. So as I realized, I didn't even know that I was spiraling. I didn't even know that I was going. But then between my grandma and my dad, I always say I was shuttled in between the two. So I'll be sent to live with my grandma for a while. She was an entrepreneur, and she'll always help me to do. And they were two distinct people. So I said that's what made me very unconventional. My dad was a typical intellectual, you know, lead lawyer, you know, sort of, you know, doing all his work focused. Then he was an entrepreneur as well. My grandmother, she always calls herself illiterate. I say semi-literate because she's self-educated herself. You hear her speaking English, you wonder. But she didn't have any education at all. And then she grew up like as a house help too, and worked her way up.
Wow.
And became very, very, very successful. One of the most powerful women of her time. And at the time, she was also raising me. So at the time, she was raising me to do street stuff like carry Piccadilly biscuits on my head and go and sell. To her, that was marketing. Where you would go to my dad's office and his marketing was at the door.
Okay.
So I was shuttling between these two people. But all I knew was they gave me work to do. So when I started working, that became my outlet. And that somehow, I don't know, made me feel good. Like doing stuff for people, running around, and you know, everybody was, and I remember a couple of times we were both criticized. Why are you making this child work? But it pleased me. I would rather, you know, do that than be with other people.
And how did having those two worlds play out in your first job? If you can
Oh
share
my
that with
God,
us.
a lot. Now, if I look back to how I started life, I mean, I look back to the reason why I craved entrepreneurship so badly. It goes back to that time, because even though they both taught me entrepreneurship, or they were the people that got me. I mean, people ask whether entrepreneurs are made or born. I still question that, because you can actually learn entrepreneurship. You can actually develop the spirit of entrepreneurship. You can have an entrepreneurial mindset. So I always say that, yes, maybe some people have it in their DNA, but I always say that entrepreneurship is socialized.
All right.
It is really something you pick up along the way, because I can't tell what you're thinking. I can't tell whether it's inherent. I know that the confidence to do things can be inherent, but entrepreneurship as a skill is something you pick up with the people around you. Either something you see, something you learn. So that is what I picked up. And I remember that when they were being criticized, I was focusing on it. When I started my first job, I was a banker. I was started as a management trainee, went into banking, but when I think back, every single time I was restless, completely restless. JJD, it was so bad that I would go to work and everything I'll think about is, I actually saw myself doing things and they happened.
Wow. What are some of those things? Share that with us.
At a point, I saw myself speaking. I was with my brother on a trip. He was doing a business conference somewhere in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. I was just there as a front office person, like just helping the people to register and all of that, and I was there. And I walked back to my room. At that time, it was just a regular conference. But as I was walking back to my room, I actually saw myself. At that time, I couldn't even imagine, because I used to be so afraid of crowds. But I actually literally saw myself in front of huge crowds, like thousands of people. And I started writing down what I was going to say in front of those crowds. I mean, I wrote down the whole thing, okay? And I think not even 5 years later, that thing actually happened. So it then taught me that some of the things I used to imagine were. So I started writing. And that was how that's how I learned the concept of writing. I wasn't a good writer. I wasn't a good orator. I mean, everybody sees me now and think, oh, you speak so well.
Yeah.
At the time, I talk too much with people I'm comfortable with.
Okay.
But I didn't speak at all.
So for a young girl who battles low self-esteem and the lack of self-confidence, how did you come out of that period?
I think learning. So I started to realize that you could learn anything. And I think that's what I tell people today. A lot of people use the word, oh, I can't do this. I can never come out of it. My situation is very bad. But I realized that if you learn, and learning is not studying, like reading a book or going to learn formally. No, you can watch people. So look for the things that you desire and start seeing them.
Okay.
And I wasn't a very early bloomer, I was a late bloomer. So let me tell you, in secondary school, today, if you go back on my secondary school platform, they laugh at me because,
really?
Oh my God, when I was in Form 1, they asked me to do something on stage. Horrible. When I was in Form 2, they were doing something, I volunteered to do it. Horrible. When I was even in secondary school, like, I used to be the most teased person. They used to say I had like big cheeks. So they said my cheeks were like, what do you call it? There was somebody in school who used to tease me. She said, my face is, let me say it in guys, she catch a watch. It's like a person who has a hen coop and has put gold on it. Yes. I mean, I used to have those kind of.
Quite cool, I think.
It was even worse. I mean, I used to be laughed at many times. But at that time, I didn't even know how those things were affecting me. I thought I was okay. I used to still follow that person, follow the crowd. Like, I've had like so many nicknames, and I didn't understand. I used to think, but now today I realize that unconventional is not something, let me use the word weird about me. It's the way I used to carry myself and behave, but I didn't know that weirdness was rather a positive thing. And that's what I'm saying, that when you find a young person, or even some people grow up with it and are very weird, they're very strange, they're very quiet, or they go into their corner, there's something good, something there.
All right.
They're either very creative, but we are not, nurturing that thing. When you find someone with low self-esteem, bottom line, that person possibly is a future leader or someone who's going to be in the spotlight. I'm telling you, every time you find somebody who is really low out there, or things are really bad for them, or it seems like they'll never get anywhere, that person has potential.
Something in there. When you built Allure Africa, what inspired you to get into the spa business or the spa world?
First of all, I've told you entrepreneurship was my base.
So you were so restless.
Yeah.
This had to happen.
Yes, it had to happen. I just at some point knew that I was going to get into building something for myself. I didn't know what it was. I thought I was going to follow my grandmother's lifestyle. I thought I was going to go into maybe food, into this, into that. For a long time, I didn't know what I was going to do. I think I went into like 4 or 5 businesses before I actually settled. But I had that, the whole Allure concept was a problem I was solving. So when I was young, my mother was given by somebody she didn't know, who thought, like an acquaintance, long story short, gave her a wrong product to use. And at the time, she didn't know that was a wrong product. She had traveled. She was outside the country, and the person says, listen, take this product. It's going to make you look better. It's like somebody who, and she applied it, and the product had a negative effect on her skin, her body. And my mother used to be known as like the person who's like the finest woman. And everybody sees her and says, she's so beautiful. You see, so no wonder how.
Yeah, you have it. Mom gave it to you.
Yeah, she always looked, spot on. And then this happened to her. So when it happened, she spiraled into more of a negative. She struggled, with it and everything. And I think because of what I was going through myself, not being able to figure out who I was for a very long time, being that person who was just there, everybody sees. You go into places and you see people like, I like this person. I was just never one of those. So when I was going through that, I saw that I could identify with that. And I said, we try different solutions all the time. We'll take it to different skincare places. You try different medications. Nothing happened. So I decided that I'm going to make sure that no woman ever goes through this thing again. So something that was at the back of my mind. So when I was starting a business, I went, I have to tell you this story. So I decided that I wanted to start a spa because that's what I knew. I had actually learned about it, studied it, because I was in the US then. When I came to Ghana and I said it, everybody says spa. What are you talking about? The cards? Are you talking? I remember, I'm not going to mention, but I went to one TV station and I was sitting there and I said, I want to share a story about a business I want to open. I'm not really sure why I got to that TV station, but I think it was something they were talking about. And I said, I'm starting a spa and I want to educate people about wellness. And I remember all the TV hosts, there were 2 guys and 1 lady, they all laughed. They were like, spa, is it what we... the cards we play, spa is...
Oh, yes. That kind of...
So nobody knew what it was.
At the time.
So everybody told me that, listen, start with something people already know.
Can connect with, okay.
So that's why I started with a salon in my father's living room. It was just myself, my sister-in-law, and another lady. Okay. And then when we started, then that is how I grew. So it was just a simple business that I started. But I've been an events planner. I've opened a restaurant. I have done a procurement. I had a consultancy. There was one time I had a business called the Eagle Group with like every company you can think about in it. And then I realized that not sometimes focusing on your core business is what, then I narrowed it down. So that's what made Allure happen. Wow. When I narrowed down and focused on my core, I was able to open up aspects of it. So I opened Allure Spa in the city, which was a flagship. I had Allure Sales and Distribution Company, which was a rep and also made products. I had a product line called Kanshi. I also had Allure Academy, and then I had Image by Allure. So I had multiple facets of the Allure Africa business, both here and in the US.
And for how long did you run Allure?
My goodness. Allure was 22 years. 1998 was, so 2018 was 20 years. So I ran it for literally 22 years.
For 22 years, I'm sure you got some things right. Probably got some things wrong.
I got many things wrong. And I got some things right. Yeah.
Great. So as an entrepreneur, what are some mistakes you made that you still see some entrepreneurs make now, and you wish you could stand on the tallest building in the world and scream and say, hey, don't do that?
A lot of people think you can open a business without knowing anything about it. And once you get experts in the business, they could run it for you and you can do it. I could shout that from the rooftop because I remember when I opened Allure, I inspired a lot of people who were also not in the knowledge industry of beauty, wellness, and so on to do it. One of the things I look back now as I inspired them, most of the problems they brought to me was staff issues. They will have a therapist today who is jumping to another place, who jump into another place. The difference with me was that I understood the technical nature of my business. There was nothing in my business, I even said it today in a session I was having, there's nothing in my business that I did not know about. So as much as I was a banker, I was a consultant, and I was outside of the terrain, I also had knowledge of everything they were doing. So people could not use indispensability as a hook. So you tell me I'm walking out or I have a bad attitude. The very moment you walk out, I walk in.
Fill in.
So I always was the person who could fill in for anything that I did at Alio. It was a trump card. So when people are starting business, I tell them, learn about it. Know how to do at least one thing. And you don't have to use it. Some people never need to use it. But that is one thing I found. The secret was to understand and have that knowledge that whatever it took, know something about your business. Be the core. Have some eye. So if you're doing events, for example, if you're in a vocation, if you know something about it, and be able to have mastery over one thing. Have mastery. So I can shout that from the rooftop, because people make and the same people break. So don't ever say that people make up everything. They are the ones who will make. I mean, I have people who are still with me today who were in my business and are still with me today. They've stuck with me and are still here. 13 years, 20 years, they are there. And there are people who also are there to break, and they don't do it intentionally. Some people are not there to break they don't do it intentionally, but who they are, they evolve, they change, they become imperfect. They get married and people influence them. They get into social circles and they are told what to do. So a lot of times when someone is breaking your business, normally don't put it to that person. It doesn't mean that the person came in with intention. The person came in with influence. Okay, so people will make and people break unknowingly. But your core should be that I know something enough about this business that when everybody walks away, I can do it, because that is how I survived failure. You know, everybody can walk away from you, but one way or the other, you can come back with knowledge.
This is She Inspires. It's an initiative by Sunny 88.7 FM to celebrate amazing women who inspire us all. We are celebrating women in different sectors across the country who are contributing in various ways. And our guest today is Dzigbordi K. Dosoo. We're having an interesting time with her already. So you built Allure for 22 years. And in your post, I remember going back to your Facebook post, you talked about bankruptcy, and you had to let this business you had built go. What happened along the way?
Well, a lot of things happen to entrepreneurs where you cannot actually quantify it or allude to one thing or say one thing contributed to it. What you can say is a number of things contributed to it. When you build a business, your business must stand on certain pillars and certain foundations. They must also be consistent. And then thirdly, the part of your business that stays comes from your ability to make certain decisive decisions so you can leave a legacy of your business. I always call Alio a legacy because you heard me say people make and people break. Yeah. I built tens of thousands of people through that business, and it will always be my legacy. I mean, today I see people out there and they're like, you know, for 20 years I worked with it, for 10 years. They built, so I built that. The other part of it was that the people who broke was the fact that I, number one, expanded beyond and quickly. And the second thing is that because I was what I call a multi-passionate entrepreneur, I think when I talked about the business, I talked about 10 or multiple facets I started. I narrowed down. When I came to the core, I also opened up again. So I was opening and growing at a very fast rate. When I was growing, I call it growing and going. So the businesses that do well go into other areas, but don't look behind them. So what I did was I delegated without looking. So as I started to delegate and hand over, what I didn't do was keep that authority that I've always had. So that was my first error. So you expand too fast. Secondly, you delegate and you don't hold on to that authority. And especially when you start as a solopreneur, it's easy. But then you have people working for you. So when I delegated, the third thing I realized was a big mistake was, Oprah Winfrey always says it, she signs today until she signs her own checks.
All right.
When you delegate the authority of finances to someone else, that is the first error to an entrepreneur. When she says she signs her own checks, it's not because she knows something about what goes on. So all the big decisions with big financial decisions were within her control. Every growth entrepreneur, everybody who has done well, don't leave the major financial decisions out of this. But for me, I was a very technical person. I focused on soft skills, I focused on teaching, I focused on giving, so I was the leader that handled business development, motivation, getting people, teams, people development, getting the technical thing, getting the products done. I was the person, I thought the hard stuff. And for somebody who's coming from a finance background, I thought that control can actually be allocated, delegated, and somebody would keep the same level. But let me tell you, over time, I've learned that businesses grow and go. The very moment you are going to release financial authority of your business to someone, then that person, you must have financial authority over. Like, you must have control of that person. That's why people leave it to their children. That's why people say, okay, why do you leave businesses to your children?
Yes.
Why do people leave it? People always say about, why do your children have to succeed you? Because there's a secret, there's something in that. Or you take a certain, what you need from that business that can do something for you. So whether you put it an investment, a trust, something, and let it work for you, and then let other people do it. But that control should be somewhere within your midst. So I believe I went on one extreme, and then I re-gave that authority. Let me call it, I assigned major decisions to others. And like I said, I don't blame them. I blame me. I don't blame anybody. Most of the time, it's not them. It's something that's going on. It's people. And I've come to realize that all those decisions are not you. People are not always necessarily bad. They don't come in to do that, but things make those things happen. And how that you're able to turn that is what, for me, matters. I learned, and that is how I turned that around.
And was it hard for you when you got to that point and you saw that, okay, this is where I failed, this is where I failed? I mean, I want to take us through the emotions of that period.
Listen, there are times where let me tell you, anybody who tells you that they have been through failure and they just learned a lesson, or they didn't go through this thing, will not be telling you the truth. Jennifer, I always tell people, go through the emotions. There are times that I lay on the floor useless for days. There are times that why did I go through depression? I went through depression because at that time, I didn't know what to do. And I mean, I'll talk a little bit about tragedy, but there were times where I always say that's why I'm saying that there's a core person, either your husband, either somebody who has become made family. And I say it today because I've had other execs or other business people tell me that, listen, they've had people who were rocks. My husband was a rock. Like, he was that person who, when it came to business, I could talk to. I could just then would find a way to step in and so on. But then somehow, whilst all of this was happening, whilst I was crumbling and I was trying to figure out, and he was trying to help me figure out, and on a normal day, on a normal functional day, normal Saturday, wake up in the morning with my family, with my daughter, and I was struggling in business, and I was trying to get myself together, and I had this supportive person, and I had this rock, and I had this pillar, and I knew whatever it was, at least I had people who would laugh with me, and that's what they kept me going. And we're going for a visit, and my daughter had a fantastic recital the day before. Everything was normal. On a normal Saturday, we come down the stairs having conversations, and I knew my daughter was asleep in her bed, and I stepped out and came back, and all I could hear was my daughter's voice screaming, mentioning my name, only to go upstairs to find my husband toppled over, and he never made it back. And to have my daughter see that happen with me trying to pick up the pieces visually at 10 years old is what made me know that in life anything can happen.
So having your daughter at 10 years see your husband toppled over, you coming in, I'm sure you took him to the hospital, and then you're told that he did not make it. How did you pass this news on to your 10-year-old daughter after what she'd already seen?
First of all, we could not break the news to her. I had to have a very senior man of God come to the house. But one of the things that I realized is that day, I remember seeing the look in her eyes when I looked at her, and I remember everybody was telling her, go to your room. Like when it happened, go to your room, go to your room. She stood by her door and she was looking. There was something in her eyes that told me that she knew something was extremely wrong. Because for her, we had that conversation, and for her, what I remember now is she always knew, she'd never seen her father like this. So seeing that, knew that at that age something was really wrong. As to what was wrong at that time, but she knew things were really bad. I think she actually believed it before I did. Yes, because I think I went through denial, but I think she knew that something was really, really, really wrong. So whilst I was worried to tell her Daddy was not coming home again, I think in her own mind, she knew something was very, very wrong. Either Daddy is stuck at the hospital or this, but it took her, I think it took her, she absorbed it better than me. I think my daughter did a better job. Today, of course, it affects her. She has a different way of dealing with it, but I think she did a better job than me on that day.
So, seeing your business crumbling, losing your husband who was a shoulder you would lean on, having a 10-year-old daughter having to deal with the loss of her father.
And being in the state of depression.
And, oh my, how did you come out of that? Or shall I say, are you still coming out of that? As a mom,
I call it from pieces to piece. I don't think you ever come out of that. You know, one of the things I always say is that pain will never go away, but you learn to live with it. I mean, today I can talk about it with a crack in my throat, but I can talk about it. But the reason why I talk about it with this level of, let me call it, understanding, is to get people to know that you can actually thrive. Okay? Don't ever think that you should not go through the emotions of what you go through. I think too many people are told, it's okay, forget it. Everything will be fine. Or God is in control. Or you'll be fine. No, you won't.
So I was going to ask you, what are some of the jargons you must have heard from around people that must have probably even made things worse?
You are strong. Everybody presumes I am strong.
Yeah.
And I think that strength is not, I think it's adaptability more than strength. You make it, which is true. But you hear things like that, and I say, I build strength every day. I'm not strong, but I build strength. You see, you have to do something. I mean, I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people who have lost their loved ones. I talk to a lot of widows. I spend time with people who are in pain in different forms, relationships, stuff like that. So I've engaged a lot of people, and there are things that I remind them of, that what you're going through, you are going to feel it, but you will need to recover quickly for reasons that nobody will necessarily come to your aid.
So talking about the grieving process, I know here in our part of the world, when we hear someone has lost a loved one, we like to gather around and be there, and we feel we have to say something, and you measure a few of those things. But I want you to quickly capture this for me. Through your grieving process, through some of the widows you've spoken to who've lost your spouses, what advice you'd give to all of us as we attempt to console people who are grieving? Yes.
Okay, so before I get to that, one of the things I want to tell people who lose loved ones, especially for me, we were both sort of public figures. So losing a loved one quietly and losing a loved one in the public is, you would have the same emotions, but having to live it publicly. So for example, when it happened, within the first 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it was already in the media. Within 30 minutes, the house was surrounded with people. People heard before I could even notify his own family. It was already on radio. It was already, so things like that are very difficult. What you would find is, I always tell somebody, people who love people, there'll be many spectators and few friends.
Okay.
So the days after the funeral is when you're actually going to feel the pain. The euphoria from the day it happens to everybody is going to be around you. But right after that person is put in the ground and you come home, everybody leaves. For everybody, life goes on. For you, you are starting the coping and grieving.
Okay.
So for people who have lost people, they should never think that the time prior to the funeral, the euphoria is when you actually grieve.
Right.
So I tell people, hear what is said, but you don't need to listen.
Okay.
So when you're talking to someone who's in a lot of pain, I tell people, listen.
Okay.
So you don't go telling the person what you feel they should feel.
Okay.
It's actually okay to ask, how did this happen? Because sometimes the more somebody talks about it, the easier it gets.
Okay.
Some people don't want to talk about it at all. Sometimes the person doesn't even need to hear a word. You can just touch them. And it's okay. You don't have to volunteer information when you don't need to. Sometimes you can just sit with them. Somebody who is grieving, you can just sit with them. Because that person normally may be talking, may be doing things, but may not be very aware of everything. So listen. That's the first thing I'll say. If there's an ability where you have that relationship where you can physically touch, you can do that. But I always say, unless the person wants to talk, if you don't have anything comforting to say, don't say anything at all. And what is comforting? For everybody, they have a different expectation.
Okay.
So telling them God is in control, telling them everything will be okay, telling them what they are going through is not that. So don't force to comfort. Be there. Be there. Be there.
This is She Inspires to celebrate women across all sectors in this month of May, and our amazing guest is Dzigbordi K. Dosoo. And we've been asking all of our guests 3 major lessons you've learned along the way.
The first lesson is what I said when I was younger. I use it today. Learn, learn, and learn. Everybody can build a skill. It's a soft skill, it's a hard skill, it's something. Because all the times my back has been against the wall, my comeback was using a skill I had. Every single time. So learn by doing, learn by watching, learn. Have something that is a fallback. When you lose one part of you, another part of you would work. So learn, watch people, learn from young people, learn from older people, there's always that. Then my second thing, which is natural because everybody knows me, that I focus a lot on personal branding. And one of the things I believe is that always build a reputation that is not commanded, but a reputation that is attracted, so that people are naturally attracted to you. When you have that, when I talk about building a reputation that you don't command, you don't have to insist that people respect you or trust you. Just be who you are, and that attraction will come. Now, what do I mean by this? Simply, always make sure that in life, you get to a stage where you would have people who will speak for you when you are not in the room.
Okay.
So every time you are building a relationship, every time you are saying something to somebody about somebody else, whenever you are talking about pushing somebody up, be in a state where that affects people positively, so that when you are not in the room and JJD is mentioned, there will be somebody who will protect you, promote you, like either defend you or recommend you. That is so important, because somebody will say, that Dzigbordi, she says it, then somebody will be like, then you don't know her. That is gold. Not the money you make, not the material things, not the beauty you have, but that reputation that people would always remember to protect you, that is defend you, or promote you, that is speak or recommend you in every situation.
All right.
So learn, and remember to do that. And if there's anything inside of you that you have, don't leave this world without giving it to somebody else.
Okay.
People say you die empty, or live full and die empty, and so on. Even if it's a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, whatever, make sure that there's something inside of you that somebody would pick. I have so many daughters and sons, and I have some very notorious ones. I have some that don't listen at all, but somehow they always find their way back. I have the most difficult ones. I have all sorts of, but somehow they always learn something from me.
Okay.
And I'm glad I get to see it. So Jennifer, 50 more years for me.
Yes.
And what I've learned is that these three things can make a difference. So yes, look to be successful, look to. But if you follow these three principles, your brand, your growth and your development, and service to people, your prayer is just an answer away.
Dzigbordi, how do you see yourself celebrating your 60th birthday? Can you give us a sneak peek?
I've been saying, I have this whole imagination of my 50th. Well, COVID came and all these things, but I saw a beautiful 50th because how I wanted to celebrate it happened. 60?
Yeah.
I think look out for a very physically fit person.
Okay.
Who is looking 30.
I like where this is going.
No, I'm just saying that 60 is just looking out for more of what you see now.
Okay.
I mean, I think I said something last week after my birthday, and I said, what I heard around my 50th birthday, the people that, let me call them testimonies of people that, I mean, some of them were mind-blowing. That some people just literally followed me and followed what I did and created models in their life which are working and things. When people, those were my gifts for my birthday. When I got some of the messages, I saw some of the business. I visited certain people who I'd never met, who had actually transformed their life and businesses because of what I share. It just gave me something. Between now and 60, watch out, I'm going to be giving much more.
Awesome. Awesome,
than ever.
awesome, awesome. Dzigbordi, it's been great having you in She Inspires. I'm sure we're going to be knocking at your door again.
No problem at all.
But it's been great
been a
having you, and I
pleasure.
know that your story has encouraged someone, whether it's someone who's grieving from the loss of a partner, for someone whose business may be struggling or may have lost along the way and has to build it in another way or the same way. Whichever way, I know that your story has touched someone today in one way or the other. I want to say thank you for opening up yourself to us and sharing your life with us, and we pray that the Lord continues to keep you. And we're watching out for the 60th.
60th, we're going to have a blast.
Thank you. This has been She Inspires with Dzigbordi K. Dosoo. Watch out for our next edition. I am JJD. Bye-bye.
On the IM Drive is She Inspires. She Inspires profiles inspiring women of our times across all sectors of society. Join us as our distinguished guests share their lives with us, their journey behind the scenes, why they do what they do, life's lessons garnered over the years, their faith, family life and work balance, and so much more.